The wind howled through the dark forest as heavy rain slammed against the roof of an old metal cabin. Inside, a man sat near a low fire, flipping through a tattered book with half his attention. The storm didn't bother him. He was used to storms, and he was used to silence. He had lived alone for years, ever since the war ended, and he chose not to return to the cities. People were loud. Machines were loud. Out here there was peace. But tonight, something was different. A loud knock echoed through the walls. It wasn't wind. It wasn't a branch. It was a hand. Someone was knocking on his door. He stood up slowly, his boots thudding on the wooden floor. His hand hovered near the old plasma tool on the table. He wasn't expecting anyone. And in these woods, surprise visitors usually meant trouble. He walked to the door, paused, and then pulled it open just enough to peek outside. There, in the middle of the downpour, stood a tall, thin figure. She was shaking. Her skin was a pale, bluish gray, almost glowing under the flash of lightning. Her clothes were torn and soaked. One arm hung at her side as if it was broken. Her large, dark eyes stared into his with a mixture of fear and pain. And then, without a word, she collapsed. The man caught her before she hit the ground. She was lighter than he expected, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her skin was cold, and he could see the outline of bruises along her arms and neck. Without thinking, he carried her inside and laid her gently on the old couch near the fire. He didn't know who or what she was, but he couldn't leave her out there to die. He covered her with a blanket, added wood to the fire, and turned on the old solar-powered heater. She didn't move. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He placed a bowl of warm water nearby and cleaned the dirt from her face. Up close, he could see that her ears were slightly pointed, and her hair, though tangled and wet, shimmered faintly in the firelight. She was clearly not human, but she was hurt, and that was enough. Hours passed. He sat quietly, watching her from his chair across the room. She didn't wake up. Her body twitched now and then like she was trapped in a bad dream. He wondered what had happened to her. Was she running from someone? Had she escaped a crash? Was she lost? He didn't ask. Not yet. First, she needed to survive the night. Near dawn, she stirred. Her eyes blinked open, slowly focusing on the ceiling. She sat up too fast, then winced in pain, holding her side. The blanket fell away, and when she saw him sitting there, calm, still, and silent, she panicked. She backed away from him, nearly falling off the couch. "It's all right," he said, softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe, you're inside. No one's chasing you." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't speak. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. He placed a small plate of food on the table near her. "Just bread and fruit. Nothing fancy." Then he stepped back. "You don't have to talk," he said. "Eat if you're hungry. Sleep if you're tired. I won't ask questions." She stared at him for a long moment, then at the food. Her hands trembled as she picked up the bread. She sniffed it carefully, then took a small bite. The way she chewed told him she hadn't eaten properly in a long time. He went back to his chair and sat down, giving her space. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the rain began to slow. The sky turned a soft gray as morning light filtered through the clouds. Inside the small cabin, the alien woman huddled near the fire, eating in silence, and the human man watched quietly, knowing something had just changed in both their lives. He didn't know her name. She didn't know his. But for the first time in years, she wasn't running. The alien woman stayed mostly curled up on the couch, wrapped in the old blanket like it was the only safe thing in the world. Her body was healing slowly, thanks to rest, warm food, and the heater, but her eyes never stopped watching him. Every move he made, she followed. Not with curiosity, but with fear. She didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The man noticed it, but he didn't take it personally. He kept things quiet. He didn't touch her. He didn't ask questions. He left food for her at mealtimes and gave her clean clothes he found in a storage box. Old human. Shirts and a soft jacket she ended up wearing constantly. One night he caught her walking quietly through the cabin when she thought he was asleep. She checked the doors, opened and closed drawers, and even peeked into the storage room. When she noticed him watching her, she froze. He didn't stop her. He simply said, "Nothing here can hurt you. Look wherever you want." She stood still for a few seconds, then quickly returned to the couch. After that, she didn't leave the main room again. The man spent most of his days outside, chopping wood, checking his crops, or fixing things around the small property. He always made sure to leave the door open when he was out, just in case she wanted to leave. But every time he came back, she was still there. One morning, he found her sitting by the window, staring at the sky. It was the first time she wasn't hiding in the shadows. "You can go any time," he said gently, placing a cup of warm tea on the table. "But if you want to stay longer, that's fine too." She didn't respond. But she looked at the tea, then at him. That was the first time their eyes met without fear in hers. Later that day, while cleaning the room she slept in, the man noticed something stuck inside her old torn jacket. It was a thin metal collar, small with a broken lock and faded alien markings. His hands stopped moving. It wasn't just any collar. It was the kind used in the outer worlds to control slaves or prisoners. Tech, built to track, punish, or silence whoever wore it. The wires inside were cut. Someone had ripped it off. He placed it on the table and stepped back. He didn't ask about it. He didn't need to. The scars on her body, the way she flinched from sudden sounds, and the fact that she still refused to speak, everything made sense now. She wasn't just lost. She was running. That night, she didn't eat. He tried to speak to her gently. "You're not a prisoner anymore. No one here will hurt you. Not me. Not anyone." Still, no reply. He went outside for a while to give her space. The stars were out, cold and silent. When he came back inside, he saw her standing over the table, staring at the broken collar. She didn't notice him at first. Her hand touched it slowly, then she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, he was standing nearby. She froze, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. Instead, he picked up the collar, walked outside, and dropped it into the fire pit. It caught flame easily, turning black and curling under the heat. From behind him, he heard her breath catch. "I don't need to know your story," he said without turning around. "But whatever it was, it's over now." She stood at the doorway for a long moment. Her eyes moved between him and the fire. Then she stepped back inside, shutting the door gently behind her. The next morning, something was different. She didn't hide her face anymore. She sat at the table when she ate, and for the first time she spoke. Just one word. "Thank you." It was quiet, almost like a whisper. But he heard it, and it was enough. The cabin felt warmer now, though the weather outside was still cold. She no longer avoided him. She still didn't say much, but that one word, "thank you," had changed something between them. She helped with small tasks around the house. She washed the dishes. She folded blankets. Once, she even brought him his jacket when he was outside working in the rain. The man didn't expect anything from her. He was simply glad to see her healing. One evening, they sat near the fire. He was fixing a broken lamp, and she was sitting nearby, slowly brushing her long hair with her fingers. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was peaceful. She suddenly spoke. "My name is Lyra." The man looked up. It was the first time she said her name. Her voice was quiet, unsure, but steady. He smiled gently. "I'm Jonah." She nodded once, as if storing that information in a safe place. A few moments passed. Then, slowly, she began to speak again. "I was taken from my planet when I was still young. There was a raid. Many of us were captured. They sold us to different planets. Some were put to work, others were just forgotten." Jonah stayed quiet. He didn't interrupt her. He just listened. "They told us humans were the worst, that your kind showed no mercy, that if one ever found me, they would treat me like a tool. Or worse." She looked at him now. Her eyes held no anger, just pain. But you didn't. You didn't touch me. You didn't lock me up. You didn't even ask why I was here. Jonah leaned forward and gently said, I don't need to know someone's past to treat them with respect. Lyra looked down at her hands. They were healing now. The bruises were fading, but the memories stayed. Sometimes I still hear their voices at night, she whispered. The ones who laughed when we begged for water. The ones who made us afraid to speak. Jonah's fists tightened. But he said, nothing. I escaped months ago. I don't even know how I made it this far, she continued. I ran from ship to ship, hiding in cargo bays. I stole food from storage crates. I slept in cold tunnels, scared every second. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't trust anyone. Her voice cracked on the last word. Jonah finally spoke. Then why did you knock on my door? Lyra gave a small, bitter smile. I didn't plan to. I was just passing through. But the rain was heavy, and I was too weak to walk anymore. I thought, if this was the end, maybe a door would open for once, maybe someone would show kindness. She paused. I didn't expect that someone to be human. Jonah looked into the fire for a while. His voice was low when he replied. Not all humans were part of the war. Some of us were just trying to survive too. Lyra tilted her head. You lost someone? He nodded. My brother. He was caught in a crossfire when the fighting reached our colony. After that, I didn't want to live near people anymore. Too much noise. Too much pain. She understood that. Pain had a way of making people hide. They sat in silence again, but this time it was filled with understanding. Later that night, Jonah found something unusual. A small wooden carving was left on the table, something he hadn't seen before. It was shaped like a flower, carved with rough edges but full of effort. He looked at Lyra. She didn't say it was from her, but she didn't have to. He placed it near the window where the sun would shine on it every morning. The next day, Lyra spoke a little more. She asked about earth plants, about the names of stars, about why Jonah had chosen this place to live. Her voice was still soft, still unsure, but it carried hope now. A small light had returned to her. She still had scars, inside and out. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a prisoner. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Each day at the cabin brought something new for Lyra. She no longer sat in the corners or flinched when Jonah walked by. Her steps were lighter, her eyes brighter. The heavy shadows around her were slowly fading. She started to explore the space more. She cleaned the shelves, asked questions about human tools, and even fixed a broken chair on her own. Jonah noticed these changes, but he didn't say much. He didn't need to. He just gave her quiet support, like always. One morning, Lyra stood outside the cabin, watching the trees sway gently in the breeze. Birds chirped in the distance. A soft wind played with her hair. It felt peaceful. She breathed in deeply, and for once the air didn't feel heavy. She whispered to herself, I'm still here. That same afternoon, Jonah returned from the garden carrying a basket of vegetables. He handed her a small tomato and asked with a smile, You want to help cook today? Lyra hesitated for a moment. Then she nodded. They stood side by side in the tiny kitchen preparing stew. Lyra chopped carefully, copying Jonah's movements. She asked what each spice was. She even laughed just a little when she sneezed from the pepper. The sound surprised both of them. It was the first time Jonah had heard her laugh. Not the broken kind of laugh from remembering pain, but a real one, soft, unsure, but warm. Looked at her and said gently, You should do that more often. She looked down shyly and replied, I forgot what it felt like. That night they ate together by the fire. The stew was simple but good. Lyra offered Jonah a piece of warm bread without being asked. He smiled and accepted it. Everything felt calm, but calm never lasts forever. 3 days later, as the sun was setting and they were cleaning up after dinner, Lyra's face changed. She froze in place. Her eyes focused on something far away, something Jonah couldn't see. He followed her gaze to the sky. A small transport ship was descending through the clouds. It was sleek, dark, and too quiet. Not a trade ship, not local. Jonah's heart dropped. Lyra's voice was a whisper full of fear. "They found me." Jonah stood up and moved quickly. "Inside. Now." She didn't argue. She followed him into the cabin and he locked the door. He reached under the bed and pulled out an old security scanner. It blinked a few times, then showed a signal. Just one, moving closer. "They tracked something," Lyra said, backing away from the window. "Maybe my collar had a backup chip. Or maybe someone I passed told them." Jonah cursed under his breath, not at her but at the situation. Lyra sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. She rocked slightly, her breath shaky. "They'll take me back." "I can't go back, Jonah. I'd rather—" "Hey," he cut in firmly, kneeling beside her. "You're not going anywhere. You're safe here." Her eyes filled with tears. "But they'll hurt you." "I've handled worse," he said simply. "They don't know who they're dealing with." Lyra looked at him and something changed in her expression. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was guilt. And something deeper. Something like care. "I shouldn't have come here," she whispered. "I brought danger to your home." Jonah shook his head. "No, you brought light back to it." For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the ship landed somewhere past the trees. The forest fell quiet, too quiet. Jonah stood and began gathering old tools and devices. He handed Lyra a small communicator. "If I tell you to run, take this path." He pointed toward the back window. "Stay low, stay fast, don't stop." She took the device with shaking hands. "And you?" He gave a small smile. "I'll make sure they don't follow." Lyra stared at him, heart pounding. She had trusted no one for years. But right now she didn't want to lose the one person who had shown her kindness. She gripped the communicator tightly and whispered, "Please be careful." Jonah nodded, already moving toward the front door. The night had turned quiet, but danger was near, and both of them knew this peace was about to be tested. The night was too quiet. Jonah stood near the front door, listening closely. His cabin was surrounded by tall trees, and the soft sound of leaves blowing in the wind was usually calming. But now, every small sound made him alert. He had seen that kind of ship before during the war. It was used by private hunters and collectors, people who captured others for profit. If they were here, they weren't looking for peace. Lyra sat near the back window, hidden behind a cabinet. She was shaking but silent. Her hand tightly held the communicator Jonah gave her. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was clear. She didn't want to run, not again. Jonah opened a hidden drawer near the floor and took out an old energy blaster. It still worked, though its charge was weak. Along with it, he pulled out a pack of flash bombs and a trap trigger device. Things left over from a past he hoped he'd never need again. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Lyra looked up at him. She wanted to say no. She wanted to beg him to hide with her, to wait and hope they passed by. But she knew better. "They won't leave, will they?" she asked. Jonah shook his head. "They didn't come all this way for nothing." A red light blinked on the scanner. 2 life forms moving closer. Jonah peered out through a small crack in the wooden wall. 2 tall figures were walking through the trees. Both wore dark armor and carried long rifles. Their helmets covered their faces, but Jonah could feel their eyes scanning the area. He turned to Lyra. "Go through the back door. Take the small trail near the old fence. Hide behind the rocks, I'll lead them away." "No," she said suddenly. Jonah blinked. "What?" "I'm not running again. Not while someone is finally standing for me. I can help." Jonah stared at her. This was the same woman who just weeks ago couldn't even look him in the eye. Now she wanted to stay and fight. "Can you shoot?" he asked. She shook her head. "But I can distract. I can confuse them. I know how their helmets work. I was near them for too long." He hesitated, then slowly handed her a flash bomb. "Press. Here. Then throw it. Don't wait too long." She nodded and hid behind the wall near the front entrance. Minutes passed. Then, heavy boots crunched just outside. Jonah opened the door before they could knock. The two armored figures stepped forward. "This is private land," Jonah said calmly. "Turn around." One of them raised his weapon. "We're here for property, a stolen asset." Jonah's jaw tightened. "There's no property here, only people." "She's not yours," the voice snapped. "She's not yours either," Jonah said. Without warning, the first figure tried to push past. Jonah activated the trap trigger. Hidden spikes shot up from the ground, causing one of the attackers to stumble back. At that exact moment, Lyra threw the flash bomb from behind the wall. A bright burst lit the area. The attacker shouted, disoriented. Jonah used the moment to fire a shot from his old blaster, hitting one in the leg. The other tried to respond, but Lyra threw a heavy pan at him from the side, knocking him off balance. Jonah rushed forward, grabbed the rifle, and disabled its power. Core. The attacker tried to fight back, but Lyra jumped in, hitting him with a stick again and again until he backed off. After a few minutes of struggle, both attackers were on the ground, hurt, but alive. Jonah picked up their communication unit and smashed it with a rock. Then he looked down at them. "Tell your buyers," he said firmly, "she's not coming back. Ever." Lyra stood beside him, breathing hard. The attackers groaned and slowly crawled back to their ship. Jonah and Lyra didn't say anything until the ship lifted off and vanished into the night sky. Then, slowly, Lyra sank to the ground. Her hands were shaking, but she was smiling. Just a little. "I didn't run," she whispered. Jonah sat beside her. "No, you didn't." She turned to look at him, her eyes full of emotion. "Why did you fight for me? You didn't even know me." He looked at her and said, "Because no one should go through what you did, and because you mattered. From the moment you knocked on my door." Lyra didn't speak. She just nodded. And for the first time, she leaned against him, not because she was weak, but because she felt safe. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds. For the first time in many days, it wasn't gray, it wasn't raining. The forest looked calm, fresh after the storm. Birds sang from the trees again, as if they were celebrating something. Inside, the cabin. Lyra stood quietly by the window. She was holding a cup of warm tea Jonah had made for her. Her hands were still sore from the fight, but she didn't mind the pain. It was real, and it reminded her she had chosen to stand. She turned to look at Jonah, who was sitting near the fireplace fixing a broken piece of equipment. "I still don't believe it," she said softly. "We stopped them. Together." Jonah gave a small smile. "You were braver than I expected." Lyra looked away, a little shy. "I was scared the whole time." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Jonah replied. "It means you fight anyway." She thought about his words. Her life before had been full of running, hiding, obeying. Fighting had always been a punishment. But now, fighting had meant freedom. And someone had stood beside her, not over her. Later that day, Lyra cleaned up the broken mess left behind by the attackers. The chairs were knocked over, one window had cracked, and some tools were missing. But the cabin was still standing. Just like her. Jonah helped her hang a small curtain over the broken window. While they worked, they talked like two old friends. She asked, "Did you ever think you'd be doing this, helping a stranger from another world?" He chuckled. "Not really. I came here to avoid people. Now look at me." She smiled. "Do you want me to leave now? I mean, it's safer for you without me." Jonah paused for a second, then answered firmly, "No, I want you to stay, as long as you want to." Her eyes softened. For so long, Her choices were made by others. Now someone was finally giving her the choice. "I want to stay," she said. In the days that followed, they built new routines. Lyra helped grow the garden, repaired broken tools, and even learned to cook full meals. She was quick to learn. Each morning she greeted Jonah with a smile, and each evening they sat by the fire sharing stories. One night, as stars lit the sky, Lyra brought out a small item from her room. It was another wooden carving, this one shaped like a bird, wings, spread wide. "I made this for you," she said, placing it gently on the table. "You gave me freedom. I wanted to give you something back." Jonah picked it up and looked at it closely. It was simple but full of meaning. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "It means a lot." Lyra sat down beside him, quiet for a moment. "I don't feel broken anymore." He looked at her. "That's because you're not." She took a deep breath. "Back when I was trapped, I thought I would never feel anything again. Not peace, not happiness, not trust." Jonah didn't interrupt. He let her speak. "But now I look around and I see something else. I see safety, I see care, and I feel human, even if I'm not." Jonah nodded slowly. "That's because being human isn't just about species. It's about kindness, strength, hope, and you have all of those." Her eyes filled with emotion. She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you for opening the door that night," she whispered. "You changed my life." Jonah smiled warmly. "You changed mine too." Outside, the stars shone brighter. The cabin, once silent and lonely, now had laughter, purpose, and healing inside its walls. The world beyond the trees was still dangerous. But inside this small home, something stronger had been built, something no one could take away. Trust. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Life at the cabin moved slowly but steadily. Lyra and Jonah worked together side by side, shaping a new world out of the broken pieces of the old one. Lyra had her own small garden patch now. She planted strange alien seeds Jonah didn't recognize, and they grew tall and bright. She smiled when the first flowers bloomed, and Jonah laughed when a few strange fruits fell on his boots. She still told stories, sometimes about her home world, sometimes about the small moments she remembered from her past. Jonah listened with care, never rushing her, never judging. She trusted him, and that trust had changed everything. One clear morning, a group of travelers passed near the cabin. They were tired and hungry, their clothes torn from long journeys. Without hesitation, Lyra invited them inside. She cooked a meal with Jonah's help, sharing food and warmth. Jonah watched as the travelers' eyes widened in surprise. "You help strangers?" one asked. Lyra smiled softly. "I was once a stranger who needed help. Now I give it." The travelers stayed for a night before continuing on their way. But their gratitude stayed with Lyra and Jonah, a quiet reminder of how kindness could ripple outward. Inside the cabin, as the sun set, Jonah looked at Lyra. "Do you ever think about the past?" he asked. She paused, then nodded. "Sometimes, but the past doesn't control me anymore." Jonah smiled. "Good, because your future is here, with me." Lyra looked around the small home, filled with laughter, light, and hope. "I don't know what the future holds," she said quietly. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid." He reached out, taking her hand in his. "Neither am I," he said. They sat together in silence, watching the stars come out one by one. Years of cruelty had tried to break her. Years of pain had taught her to trust no one. But one open door, one kind human, had given her a new chance at life, a new beginning. And that was more than enough.